In my family, we didn't ask questions. We kept things running, quietly, efficiently, under the radar. Until one day, I stopped following orders. That's when I realized, it was never about loyalty. It was about leverage. Where I grew up, things didn't run by luck. They ran by arrangement. It wasn't criminal. At least, not in the way people think. There were no gangs, no guns, no one running from the law. Just people who understood how to keep things stable, quietly. My family was at the center of it. My grandfather started with waste collection. 1 truck, 3 clients, no paperwork. Over time, it grew. Not big, but deep. Every house, every farm, every business within 20 miles used our route. No one asked questions. No one changed providers. Then came my uncle, logistics. He handled equipment rentals, short-haul contracts, seasonal labor. Nothing illegal, just off the books. If you needed a generator on short notice or a crew for a job that didn't officially exist, he made it happen. My dad. He handled the people. He knew who was behind on their mortgage, who was building without a permit, which council members had side income they didn't declare. He wasn't a politician, but he decided who got elected. I didn't think it was strange. Not then. It was just how things were. I started working the routes at 15. Cash pay. No time clocks. I knew not to ask why we skipped certain addresses on Tuesdays, or why we picked up closed bins from properties no one lived on. By 18, I was in. No ceremony. No handshake. Just a sit down with my father and uncle in the shop out back. They laid it out. You don't talk about what isn't yours. You don't ask about things that work. And you don't say no when it's your turn. My turn, back then, meant paperwork. I kept books, delivered envelopes, ran errands to county offices. I was good at it. Kept my head down. Got better routes. Cleaner money. By 21, I had a business card and a company truck. Officially I was operations support. Unofficially, I was the guy who moved things between people who didn't want to be seen working together. I knew which buildings were leased under cousin names. I knew which land was held under dormant LLCs. I knew which retired guys got seasonal, consulting, checks for keeping their mouths shut. It worked because we didn't stretch. No drugs. No scams. No sudden changes. Just favors. Access. Memory. Every now and then, someone would test the edges, try to run for office without clearance, bid on a contract they weren't supposed to see. They'd get a visit. Nothing dramatic. Just a reminder. That's how it was. Until it wasn't. Because a year ago, something shifted. A company started buying land on the edge of town. Quietly at first, AG parcels, inheritance plots, defunct gas stations. Then they opened an office. Leased 3 commercial spaces in a month. Started asking questions. The old rule was simple, you don't disrupt. They disrupted. And that's when I got my first real job, not a delivery, not a form, but a message. They handed me a file. Said, talk to the Parker family. Make sure they remember who they're dealing with. No details. Just a name, an address, and the expectation that I understood what needed to happen. I thought it was a meeting. It turned out to be something else. The Parkers owned 12 acres just outside of town, half corn, half runoff. Not valuable, until it became a buffer between old land and what the developers were buying up. I showed up thinking it was going to be a standard sit-down. Coffee, a walk through the fields, a reminder of the handshake deals their father had made with my uncle back in the 80s. Instead, their front gate was smashed, and the mailbox was gone. That wasn't me. I never even got out of the truck. I called my uncle. Told him something had already happened. He didn't sound surprised. He just said, then leave it alone. I asked him if someone else had gone ahead of me. Long pause. Sometimes things need to be made clear early. That was new. Our family didn't damage property. We didn't get loud. We didn't leave evidence. Whatever this was, it wasn't part of the rulebook I was given. The next day, the Parkers called a local lawyer. Not the type who did real damage, but still, paperwork. That meant they weren't scared. That meant escalation. And that's when things started to change. Jobs came in differently. Less face-to-face, more through messages. Locations without context. Tasks that felt off. Pick up a document from an empty storage unit. Deliver a sealed envelope to a real estate agent I'd never met. Drop an unmarked key at a bait shop closed for the season. No explanations. No receipts. I started asking small questions. Who were these pickups for? Where was it going? No one answered. Then the calls stopped altogether. For 3 weeks, nothing. My name wasn't on the driver list. My route was reassigned. I called my cousin, he didn't pick up. Showed up to the shop, my access card didn't work. It wasn't a suspension. It was a lockout. I'd made a mistake. Not by failing a job. By hesitating. That's the real rule, if you're not moving, you're a liability. Eventually, my dad called. You need to decide if you're in or out, he said. No halfway. I asked, what changed? He said, the town's growing. We can't run it like it's 1997 anymore. Meaning, control has to evolve. And I was either part of the pressure, or part of the mess to clean up. He gave me one more job. Said it would clear things. A simple presence play. Go to the zoning meeting. Sit in the front row. Don't say a word. Just be seen. That was it. But I didn't go. And 3 days later, my lease was terminated. My lease was month to month. Always had been. The apartment was above a print shop my dad's cousin owned. Rent was cash, no paperwork, no deposit. Easy in, easy out. Until it wasn't. I came home one evening and found a notice on the door, unit no longer available. Vacate within 5 days. No explanation. No warning. Just done. I called the cousin. He didn't pick up. I stopped by the shop. It was closed during business hours. No one said it outright, but I knew what was happening. In the family system, no isn't an argument. It's a signal. And everything that used to be support, housing, work, silence, gets pulled back, quietly. The next week, I tried using my company fuel card at the usual station. Declined. I checked the app, it had been deactivated. Same story with the tools I'd checked out for field work. Gone from my account. My name wasn't even in the contractor system anymore. They were erasing me. Not out of revenge. Not even anger. Just policy. You don't work with unknowns. You isolate them. Box them out until they either crawl back in or disappear. I didn't crawl back. Instead, I looked for patterns. It turns out, this wasn't the first time someone in the family structure had been shut out. There was a guy named Reed, older, used to run site inspections for permits. He'd vanished about 4 years earlier. Rumor was he moved out of state. But a few notes I found in old project files said otherwise. Turns out, he'd questioned an annexation push, asked too many things about who was getting paid for what. He disappeared 2 weeks later. No fallout. No press. Just erased. Another name popped up, Tanya. She was legal support for the operation, cleaned records, polished contracts, kept language vague. Then, gone. I found a traffic citation for her tied to a car registered in Illinois, 2 counties over. The address was fake. She didn't move. She hid. I wasn't the first one to back out of the structure. I just didn't realize how quickly it moved when you did. After 2 weeks without work or a place to live, I started sleeping in the shop. Not our shop. The old one, my grandfather's. It had been closed for years, locked up behind a metal roll door and 2 padlocks. I still had a key. No one ever asked for it back. It had no heat, no running water, but it had a roof. And old files. Stacked boxes of hand-signed documents, notes, maps, and ledgers. Real ones. From before everything went digital. And in those files, I started seeing the same names from recent deals. The same parcels. The same company names, recycled across decades. Except one thing didn't match, a new name kept popping up, Crestfield Partners LLC. It wasn't one of ours. And yet, they were suddenly on half the property transfers in the last 18 months. That was the new player. And someone had already let them in. Crestfield Partners LLC didn't have an office in town. No signs, no trucks, no face. But their name was on 8 property transfers in under 2 years. Old farmland. Disused buildings. Edge-of-town parcels the county had stopped taxing aggressively. Quiet acquisitions. On paper, Crestfield was based out of Denver. But the filing address was a shared law office. No employees listed. No board. Just one managing contact, L. Harland. I didn't recognize the name. But when I checked the filings, I found something strange. On 2 of the earliest transfers, the seller representative was my cousin Brian. He'd handled the paperwork, signed off on the contracts, facilitated the sales. Brian was supposed to be on our side. He managed permit timing, construction schedules, compliance paperwork, everything our family used to hold leverage over development. He wasn't supposed to sell anything, let alone introduce outside capital. I called him. Straight to voicemail. So I drove to his house. Lights on. Truck in the driveway. I knocked. He opened the door halfway. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. I didn't argue. I just asked him how long Crestfield had been in play. He didn't answer. Then I asked the real question, who gave them access? He looked me dead in the eye. "Everyone," he said. "We brought them in. You just weren't told." That was it. The old system, the one my grandfather built, the one I thought still mattered, was already dead. My family hadn't been defending the town from outside control. They'd sold it, piece by piece, parcel by parcel, in return for long-term shares, payouts, influence. Brian stepped outside, shut the door behind him. "You think you're the first to say no? You're just the last to find out." He wasn't angry. Just tired. He told me they'd been losing ground for years. That the only way to stay in the game was to let someone else play it louder. And Crestfield? They didn't want control. They wanted cover. So the family gave it to them. In exchange, we kept local titles, ran ops, moved assets. On the surface, nothing changed. But everything underneath had shifted. The Parkers? They were the first ones to say no. That's why the message turned violent. It wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. An example. And Brian? He signed the order. After that talk with Brian, I didn't go back to the shop. There was nothing to go back to. Instead, I started watching. Every day for a week, I sat in a borrowed car across from the county office, watching who came and went. Lawyers. Clerks. Surveyors. Some were familiar. Some weren't. But one thing stood out. A new driver. Young guy, early 20s, pulling up in a company-branded truck. Same make, same color as the one I used to drive. He carried sealed envelopes in and out. Stopped for no one. Knew the routine. Knew the people. I followed him twice. He ran the same routes I used to. He wasn't temporary. He was my replacement. That's how fast it happens. You don't lose access. You get replaced in silence, by someone who doesn't ask questions. I learned his name was Keegan. No relation. Just a hire. Clean record. Local. Eager. I watched him drop a packet at the assessor's office. Waited 30 minutes. Followed the clerk when she took the forms back to a private room. I got a look at the top page. Crestfield logo. Parcel ID I recognized, South End Industrial Zone, and used for years. That land wasn't being managed anymore. It was being flipped, which meant the family wasn't holding power. They were selling cover, putting their name on deals to make them look local, then handing over control to Crestfield. The structure I'd been raised in wasn't failing. It had evolved into something else. And I was the last idiot still acting like the old rules applied. A week later, Keegan showed up at the old shop. He didn't have a key, but he had a new padlock and a drill. I watched from inside, lights off. He cut the old lock, fitted a new one, and made a call. I heard him say, "It's done." Then he left. The message was clear, even the empty buildings had been reassigned. I packed up that night. Everything I'd pulled, files, names, parcels, timestamped lists. Not to expose it. Not yet. Just to keep the leverage from vanishing. Because once the building is gone, all that's left is who remembers how it stood. And right now, I was the only one who remembered the structure before Crestfield. I didn't want revenge. I wanted options. First thing I did was make copies, physical and digital. I split them across 3 drives, left one in a lockbox 2 towns over, mailed another to a P.O. box I opened under a dead LLC, and kept the third on me. Not because I planned to use them yet. Just in case someone thought I wouldn't. The second thing I did was take inventory. Over 10 years of back-channel activity. Parcels sold under misfiled trusts. Zoning changes requested before application dates. Payments made to consultants who never showed up on payroll. And deals signed under names of people who hadn't lived in the county for years. All approved. All quiet. All traceable. I wasn't looking to burn anyone. That's how you lose options. I wanted pressure. So I started small. I showed up to a zoning committee meeting. No badge. No announcement. Just sat there, same seat I was told to fill months earlier. Let a few people see me. Made a few others nervous. Later that week, I left an envelope in the planning director's mailbox. Inside, copies of 2 misdated permits and the assessor logs that contradicted them. No name. No message. Just alignment. He'd know where they came from. 2 days later, I got a text from a number I hadn't seen in 6 months. "You're being watched. Walk soft." I replied with a location and time. A public library. Downtown. Neutral. Boring. He showed up. My uncle. He sat down across from me. "No hello. You want to bring it all down?" he asked. "No," I said. "I want distance." "Then why poke around?" "Because people forget who handled the foundation." He nodded. "You've still got access," he said. "Not official, but people remember. You make noise, they'll think you're back." "I'm not back," I said. "Then stop acting like it." He stood to leave. I said one last thing, "Crestfield didn't build this. They leased it. I still know where the cracks are." He didn't answer. Just walked out. That night, I got a notification. A document had been uploaded to a shared archive I hadn't touched in over a year. It was from my cousin Brian. A set of balance sheets, invoice chains, and one quiet contract that hadn't been filed yet, an easement transfer that gave Crestfield legal access to a protected greenbelt. It wasn't active yet. But it would be. He'd handed me proof of a breach. And a bargaining chip. I waited 2 days. Long enough for them to wonder if I was going to use what Brian gave me. Long enough for them to sweat, but not long enough to call my bluff. Then I made my move. I printed one copy of the easement contract, highlighted the breach, attached a summary showing how it connected to a zoning regulation that hadn't been updated since 2009. I mailed it, certified, to one place. The County Land Review Board. Not the main office. Not the zoning commission. Just one guy who still worked part-time reviewing flagged filings for compliance. He wasn't a power player. He was a speed bump. But that was the point. I didn't need to blow it up. I just needed to slow it down. A week later, the easement was under review. Crestfield's approval timeline slipped, quietly. No headlines. But inside the family system, it sent a signal. Someone had hands on the wires. And no one knew where the pull came from. That's when the calls started again. First my cousin. Then Brian. Finally, my father. No threats. No guilt. Just tone. Like they were feeling out how far I was willing to go. I told them the truth, not far. But far enough. I laid out the terms. Simple. I wanted my name off everything, every record, every LLC, every legacy file. I wanted my routes, addresses, and accounts cleared. And I wanted a written release, signed, notarized, private. After that, they'd never hear from me again. My dad was quiet. Then he said, "We made you. Don't forget that." I said, "That's why I'm giving you a chance to finish it clean." A week later, the documents arrived. Discreet envelope. Sealed. Stamped. My name was cleared. But I knew better than to trust silence. So I mailed the backup drives to 3 addresses I hadn't used yet. If anything changed, I had options. I wasn't trying to hold power anymore. I was just keeping the tools. Because once you've been inside a structure like that, you understand one thing. They never close the door all the way. They just wait to see if you come back through it. After the release documents cleared, I started dismantling what was left. I sold the car registered under the old company name. Cashed out the last fuel card balance. Cancelled 3 accounts I'd never opened myself but had been quietly maintained under my ID, insurance, utilities, a phantom consulting profile tied to a non-existent construction firm. None of it had ever been for me. I started forwarding mail to a drop address out of state. No P.O. box. No real name attached. Just something clean. Then I deleted everything. The backups, the copies, the shared archive, burned to zero. Not because I trusted them. But because leverage doesn't mean anything once you've left the table. And I was done playing. 2 weeks later, I heard Crestfield pulled out of 2 upcoming developments. Quietly. No press release. No buyer lined up. Just dead filings and empty lots. The reason? Environmental complications. They didn't name me. They didn't need to. Without guaranteed local cover, they weren't interested. I hadn't attacked them. I'd just shown them what happened when someone unplugged the structure they were leaning on. That's how systems like this die, not with a bang, but with a missing part no one wants to replace. Around town, things got quieter. The new guy, Keegan, still working. But not running sensitive drops anymore. My cousin Brian moved into real property management. Legit side of the business. Paper contracts. Zoning boards. Public records. No more envelopes. My dad stopped calling. Not out of spite. Just routine. Like he'd finally accepted I wasn't waiting for the next job. And that I wasn't bluffing. I didn't leave town right away. I just started shrinking my radius. Stopped showing up in places I used to. No more check-ins at the yard. No more late-night stops at the shop. No more being seen by people who kept lists of who was where. Eventually, I got a call from an old name I hadn't heard in years, someone outside the family, but tied to it. She said, "I heard you stepped off." I said, something like that. She said, "Takes discipline to walk away without taking something with you." I told her, I didn't leave empty-handed. I didn't want the files. Not the ledgers, not the contracts, not the receipts. They were clean enough to sit in a drawer, dirty enough to light the match if I ever needed to. But I didn't want them. So I passed them. Not to law enforcement. Not to the press. To someone who used to work the other end, contracted by the county 2 election cycles ago. A zoning analyst. Quiet guy. Left after 1 term. Now worked independently, paid by foundations to build land use models for towns trying to dodge what ours became. I didn't tell him what to do with the files. I just handed over a drive. Said, "This is how it used to work. Do what you want with it." Then I walked away. I didn't ask for updates. Didn't give him my number. Just left. That's how I closed it. No threats. No speeches. Just transfer. Some things don't need to be destroyed. They just need to be removed from circulation. Weeks passed. Nothing changed dramatically. But I noticed small things. A property that was always held under a shell LLC, suddenly listed under the city's name, claimed by a grant program. A 2-acre parcel that was once fenced off for a future project, bulldozed. Reclaimed as public green space. Names that used to sit on every deal. Gone from public filings. No headlines. No scandals. Just movement. That's how systems really end. Not with exposure, but with disinterest. The people running it stop protecting it. The people who benefited move on. The weight of the structure collapses under its own need to be maintained. No one defends it. They just stop rebuilding it. That was enough for me. I didn't want credit. I didn't want cleanup duty. I didn't want a final conversation with anyone who used to hand me keys. I wanted space. So I took it. I moved 3 hours north. No big city. Not rural. Just blank enough to disappear into. The kind of place where no one asks what you used to do, and everyone assumes you're from somewhere else. I used a new name. Not fake, just unused. Middle name, mother's maiden. Clean ID. Clean record. No digital footprints connecting it to the old structure. Got a job handling freight for a distribution center. Nights. Nobody talks much. Which suits me. The people who used to matter haven't reached out. They won't. Because they don't know what I still have, or what I already let go. That's how this ends. Not with anyone winning. Not with anyone punished. Just a system that got too big, too hollow, and too dependent on silence. Once that silence cracked, the leverage was gone. The players scattered. The game stopped running. I don't check the filings anymore. I don't follow the land deals or the names that appear on new LLCs. Whatever's happening back there, if anything, isn't mine anymore. All I kept was one thing, the last set of keys to the old shop. No one ever asked for them back. It's probably still standing. Locked. Empty. The last place that held the version of me they thought would stay quiet forever. I won't go back. But I'll hold the keys. Just so no one else can walk in and try to start it all again.